Um, Hi, I'm CJ. I'm from CodeVA. I am our advancement coordinator. I've been with CodeVA for 4 years and helped with Full Steam Ahead all 4 of those years. I love this event. I think it's awesome. Very excited to be in this session with you and have Megan McDaniels, a wildlife biologist, sharing this session, Wildlife Technology and You. I can't wait to see what is ahead of us. If you need any help, please feel free to message me or Momin, and we can help you out with any audio or video stuff. Okay, y'all? Cool. But without any further ado, let's hand it off to Megan.
Thank you, CJ, and thank you, Momin, for helping to moderate. And hi, everyone, welcome. I'm so excited to be here with you and so inspired that you all have been curious about STEAM throughout this week and joined me in this session. Ooh, I think I just gave my question away. So right off the bat, without peeking at that next slide, does anyone know what we were just listening to while we were getting ready, that music that you heard? Anyone can unmute and jump in. Any ideas? Have you heard any sounds that have sounded like that before? Maybe in your backyard? No? Okay. So we were listening to a biologist named Ben Mirren, aka DJ Ecotone, and his research is using that kind of hub-looking thing that he's holding to monitor the acoustic sounds, just the noises that animals make, and he records them and remixes them like DJs do and sets them to a beat. And what we were just listening to was different birds and frogs and insects in the Chesapeake Bay and all of their different calls. So right off the bat, this is one form of using technology for conservation because his music is interesting for people, inspiring, and showcases all the different types of animals and noises that we might hear in the natural world. So I'd love to get to know everyone first. We've got kind of a big group, so you all can pick, just tell us what your name is, and then you can pick one of these questions. What's your favorite animal? What's your favorite STEAM subject? It can be anything. I won't be sad if you don't say biology. And what you hope to learn in this session. So whoever is ready and would like to share, you can just go ahead and unmute and let us get to know you.
I'll go first.
Thank you.
My name is Riley, and my favorite animal is a cat.
Awesome, Riley. Nice to meet you. Who's next? I see some people in the chat. It's fine to jump in the chat and we can read it. Hi from Mariel, and their favorite animal is a dog. BV likes axolotls. That's very interesting. Those guys are cute. Anyone else want to jump in? Awesome. Agustia, I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing your name right, but your favorite STEM subject is technology. Sweet. Nandika loves red pandas. Pandas, great. They're very adorable. Sophia likes sea otters. Ira likes birds. Taylor says hi, and that their favorite animal is a fox baby. Very cute. There's lots of fox babies out and about now. Okay, anyone else? Nadia likes manatees. Stella's favorite animal is an owl. Awesome, Stella. You'll like what we'll talk about later. Great. Thank you, everyone, for sharing these things. And I like all the animals you guys chose, and I like technology too. So awesome. Let's see. So this is just a little bit about me. My name is Megan, as you already know, and my job is a wildlife ecologist and conservation biologist. If you've never heard about what conservation or wildlife biology is before, don't worry. We're going to talk all about it in the next couple slides. And I was born in Georgia and then moved around many, many times with my family while I was growing up and lived internationally some, and then went to University of Virginia. And the work that I've done has taken me across different parts of the country, a lot of parts in Virginia, and internationally in the Pacific and in East Africa. And right now I'm living in Washington, DC, and I do research in Warrenton, Virginia, which is in Northern Virginia, and it's a rural farming area. And my favorite animal is leopards because I think they're very cool and beautiful. So just to give you an idea of what we're going to be talking about today, first we're going to go over what technology and conservation looks like. So what kind of tools scientists are using, who they work with, and why technology is important in this field. Then I'm going to share 2 examples of conservation computer science projects that I'm a part of to give you an idea of what these look like in the real world. And then throughout this discussion, I will share ways that you can be a part of conservation too, because anyone can contribute, and truly we need everyone to be a part of it. So we'll talk about some different ways that you can get involved starting today, starting during this presentation actually. And before we really dive into things, I want to set the stage by talking about the 3 values. And these are 3 qualities that I really see as being important in guiding how we come up with new ideas for technology and computer science and conservation, and work together to solve the really big problems that wildlife and our planet are facing. So the first value is creativity. And I'm sure you all know what creativity means, just having ideas, being curious, and looking with different perspectives at how things that might seem different actually are alike and can connect. So creativity is so important in inventing new things and finding new unique ways to use things that already exist. So that's a big part of coming up with ideas for technologies in conservation. Collaboration is the second value, and collaboration means working together and partnering. And in technology development and conservation, we need to think about how we can work with other people to come up with these ideas. So creativity kind of feeds into that. Like say that you are a data scientist or a car engineer. How could I work with you as someone maybe who's studying how cars are running over animals, like causing roadkill? How could we work together? We're not enemies, we're both working on different things, but we can come together to help wildlife and see and learn from each other's knowledge. And lastly, the thing that underpins all of this work is communication. So communicating is sharing our results, our progress, our ideas with each other and with the public. So just because we make a very awesome new piece of technology to study animals and we get great data and we feel like we have an answer to a problem, it doesn't really change anything in the real world if we're not communicating and sharing what we've done along the way with other people, whether that's people in government to make new laws to help protect wildlife, just people in the public maybe to cut down on the electricity that they use, or to other people, other scientists in our same field who we could work together with. So these 3 values, we'll keep coming back to them and talk about how they play a role in conservation, wildlife conservation, and especially with bringing in new technologies. So first question, what is wildlife conservation? Does anyone have an idea? Or have you heard of the word conservation before, or conserve? You can type it in the chat too if you'd like. I'm okay to wait. Thanks, Sophia and Nadia. So Sophia and Nadia, because you've heard of conservation before, can you tell us what it is? Oop, Riley says helping wildlife and keeping them safe. Yep, that's spot on. Anyone else? Well, Riley, I think you covered it perfectly. And Sophia and Nadia, glad you guys have heard of this before. So conservation is exactly protecting wildlife, protecting their habitats, and making sure they have a place to live and raise their young into the future and live alongside people so that they don't go extinct. And extinct is just when a species dies off and is completely gone from the earth forever, which is very sad. And you probably have heard of extinction with dinosaurs or saber-toothed tigers or mammoths, things like that. So follow-up question, why do we need to conserve wildlife? Or to put it another way, why are we talking about conserving wildlife and not conserving dogs or cats or cockroaches? So what's the difference with wildlife? If anyone wants to type in the chat or unmute themselves. Riley, you're on it. You're going to be a future biologist. Everything has a place in the food chain, and if one thing dies off, it could throw off the food chain, was Riley's answer, which is great. There's a lot of different reasons we'd want to conserve wildlife. That's a big part of it, that everything in the natural world is part of something that we call an ecosystem. So every animal, every plant has a role to play that helps support the other animals and plants and the habitat. So very broadly, the reason that wildlife in particular need to be protected is because they are declining. There are a lot of very big global challenges that are facing wildlife. And one of the things you can think of probably is climate change, but also changing habitats. So making new farms or building houses. These are examples of different groups of animals and what is causing them to decline. So we can see birds, reptiles and amphibians, mammals, and fish. And the red color on the bar is habitat degradation, which just means that they're losing their homes and their places to live. And so that's the biggest driver for most animals that's causing them to have fewer and fewer number. Exploitation means fishing or hunting, but also illegal things like poaching, which is where you kill an endangered animal. So that's the biggest cause of decline for fish we can see, and the second biggest for mammals. Then the purple is invasive species. So you can think of something like English ivy that grows everywhere and outcompetes native plants, but also in the Florida Everglades, for example, there's pythons who used to be people's pets that people released into the wild. They've become invasive, meaning they're many of them out of control and eating other things. Pollution, so that can be noise, light pollution, chemicals in the water, chemicals in the air or on insects. And then lastly, climate change. So that's changing temperatures and weather patterns around the world. So we see that these are really big issues that need to be solved, and they're not so easy. Very quickly on this graph, you can also see that the level of extinction of vertebrates, which just means animals that have a spine and a central nervous system, are very sharply increasing. So we can see that it was about 0.1% for fish, for all vertebrates prior to the Industrial Revolution, which is when humans started burning fossil fuels and such and really spreading across the world. So you can see how high it is now. Well, this is 2014, so recently compared to before. And this is the number of animals who have gone, or vertebrate animals who have gone extinct since the 1500s to present. So this is not to make anyone sad, but it's important to know and look at how big and challenging the problems are. But there is hope, and it lies in all of us working together and finding ways to work faster and smarter and more in a more connected way through technology. So back to conservation biology, what kind of ideas do you have about what it looks like? Like, what does someone who's studying conservation biology look like? Does it look like this? My hero, Jane Goodall, if you recognize her, studying chimpanzees in the wild and living with them in their habitat every day, writing notes about them. Does it look like this guy who loves snakes? It can look like these things. It's important for people to be studying animals in the wild. But what do you think about these people? Does this look like conservation to you? These are people who are doing what conservation is starting to look more and more like in order to address those big challenges. So on the upper left, we have Dr. Ayanna Elizabeth Johnson. She is a marine biologist, but she also spends a lot of time working on policy to protect the ocean. And she does a ton of speeches and workshops to help people learn about connecting the dots. So she does that work in the ocean, getting her hands dirty, but then she also wants to connect the dots and take it further. She recently wrote a very awesome book sharing solutions to climate change from around the world. And in the bottom, this might just look like a bunch of guys sitting around with their computers, not doing anything related to nature. Thank you, Taylor. You just said it looks like someone's studying and protecting the environment. I think, yeah, they are in kind of different ways than a lot of people would imagine. So these people look like they're just on their computers, but this is a group of scientists in Fiji working with a computer engineer and a data scientist collaborating to build an online application to help them better upload and analyze their coral reef data. So these guys go in the field, collect data on coral reef, and then the computer scientists are helping them figure out how they can process that, analyze it, and make it into something meaningful. And in the upper right corner is a climate scientist named Jill Pelto, and she loves art and doing watercolor painting. And so she is busy working on a series of paintings that take real climate data, so like zigzagging up and down trend lines that would look pretty boring to most people, and turning them into art that's very emotional and showing fires, forest decline, things like that. So making it more meaningful. Taylor says that they love painting too. I love painting also, and I think it's so cool that all these people are able to inspire and take the conservation work farther by using their skills, even if they're not always in the field. They're all using their different talents and hobbies and skills. And just to underscore that, anyone can contribute to conservation. All these people are just using their background to help wildlife in different creative ways. So like Taylor said that they love to paint, that is awesome. You can use that painting to help spread the word about conservation and wildlife, even if you don't want to work in the muddy jungle, say. Or you could work for Google and be a computer engineer and still use those coding skills to help someone develop an app like these guys in the bottom. Or if you love writing, you can use that skill to investigate different environmental issues in your community and share them with other people. So zooming in more on technology and conservation, these are a couple examples of different tech tools that are pretty commonly used to study animals. And some of them are very cutting edge and what is cool about all of them is that nearly all of them were not developed in the first place to study wildlife. This was technology that was used for medicine or military purposes or for business. And then through creativity and collaboration, these different people were able to come together and say, hey, I think I can use that to help animals. So in the upper right-hand corner is one of my favorite technologies. This is called a camera trap, and it is basically a camera that is tied up to a tree, a rock, a post, and it has a trigger within it that will take a picture or a video every time something moves in front of it or it senses heat. So that's how you can put up a camera, say by a water hole in Namibia in Africa, and you can leave. The animals aren't afraid of this camera trap like they would be afraid of a person. And then it can sit there in place and take a ton of pictures, and you can see everything that comes to the water hole and learn about the different animals that are there and how many there are. On the bottom right is a GPS collar. So you all have probably seen GPS in your phone or your parents' phone for using a map and seeing where you are. This is very similar. It goes around an animal's neck or leg, and it communicates out where they are. And so you can put these on animals and see everywhere they go and see which parts of the landscape they use, where they go during different parts of the year. It's very, very interesting. And again, people just let the animal go. You don't have to follow it in a car or anything. So it's making that a lot faster and safer for everyone. On the left corner and the middle, we have two different types of drones. So the upper left is an aerial drone, and these are very popular now for all different uses, and you get great imagery from above, but you can also put a lot of different tools on top of these drones. So this is a drone that's actually collecting the spray from within this humpback whale's spout, and it's using that to get DNA because the snot or the mucus which comes out of that spout contains the whale's DNA. So that's what those little white things on the front of it are. They're like cups to capture it. And this is an underwater drone, so it is much faster, can go much deeper than a scuba diver, and right now it's studying shark behavior in this one. Then we have the cell phone. Cell applications are very, very popular now in wildlife research. So instead of just taking a piece of paper or notebook and writing down all your notes and observations, you can access this offline when you have no Wi-Fi or service and upload different things you've seen. So very quickly, you're getting that into the app, the computer, other people can see it and use it. And it also has tools to help you as a scientist, or someone who's a tourist could also use this to help them learn about animals. And then lastly, this is called a nanopore minion. It is a very tiny DNA sequencer that helps you understand an animal's DNA, and it only takes a USB and you can plug it right in your computer. So instead of having to go to a lab, which takes tons of time and supplies, you can be in the field, in the jungle, in the forest, and after you quickly process the sample, which might be this whale snot that you just got, say you're on your boat, you run the nanopore and it's plugged into your computer, and then you can learn about the DNA of that animal. So these are just some examples. There's many, many more types of tech tools in conservation, but I thought that it would be good for you guys to get an idea of what kind of tools and processes scientists are using to answer questions, so that when you have a question or when you see a problem, you can already know right away some ways that you can try to study that problem. And if you go into any other field, whether that is being a teacher or an engineer or a cook or a writer, anything, now you know kind of what it takes, what kind of information we need from animals to study them. So you can get a good idea of how to work with other scientists or just learn more about animals. So I'm going to talk about those two example projects now. Just a reminder of our three values that we're going to bring up again: creativity, collaboration, and communication. And before I go on, I just want to open it up if anyone has any questions or ideas or wants to share how any of this has made them feel. You can unmute yourself or drop something in the chat, and I'll give it just a second before we go on.
How much does that like portable DNA tester thing cost?
Oh, it's pretty expensive. It's pretty expensive. It's not something that I would say like you can't like pick it up off the shelf or something, but it's several $1,000s, which sounds like a lot, but that's way cheaper than these kind of tools normally are in a lab. So it is helping save some costs. They're still pretty expensive, but just like how every year a computer or cell phone or even something like a solar panel gets cheaper and cheaper, these different technologies get cheaper and more advanced. So like this, the DNA sequencer really came about because of this need to do stuff in the moment, in the field, and not wait months and months to take something to a lab to find the DNA. And technology can get smaller and smaller over time, just like this GPS collar we'll see in just a minute. Another type of GPS tag gets smaller and smaller so it can go on different animals. Yeah, good question though. Does anyone else have another question or thought? Cool, I will move on and you guys can jump in or put anything in the chat as we go. Okay, the first project I want to share with you is called American Kestrel Habitat Usage. And does this bird look familiar to anyone? Has anyone ever seen this bird before or heard of it? Ooh, I just got a good question from Taylor about a creative thing. I will come back to that. Thank you, Taylor. Oops, I'm getting another chat. Yes, so Taylor has seen a kestrel before. So a kestrel, an American kestrel, is the smallest falcon species in North America. So a falcon is pretty similar to like a hawk or an eagle, except they're smaller and much faster. And they're also the most widespread. So they're found out of all the different types of falcons in the US, they're found in the most different states and different types of habitats. And they have sadly declined by half since 1960. So the number of kestrels in North America, every 1 in 2 kestrels is gone now. And so although they're so beautiful, they're adorable, very cool to watch hunting and such, there's very little known about this animal. So even the basic things like how they're using their habitat, where they want to move around, and the types of food and shelter that they need to raise their young, we don't know that much about it. So we see the problem here is that they're declining, but we don't really have a solution because we have so many question marks and blank spaces. So I'm working on this project with the Smithsonian Conservation Biology Institute and the Clifton Institute in Warrenton, Virginia. And we are studying these awesome birds. So what exactly are we doing and what kind of tech are we using along the way? So the first step is trying to figure out where the birds are going. So this is the super tiny GPS. This is one of the smallest GPS units available to scientists that we have put onto 20 female adult American kestrels who were getting ready to raise some young. And so you will see in just a minute what their nest looks like. So we catch them from these boxes. They look like a bigger version of those small bluebird boxes you might have seen around the countryside. We catch them and tie on this GPS unit, kind of like a backpack around their wings, and it's solar powered, so you never have to change the batteries. The birds love spending time in the sun, so it's charging itself up every day, and it's showing us where they are every 10 to 20 minutes. So kind of like how as you're driving in the car, you can see your car moving on the highway. Imagine instead of it coming in real time, you only saw your car show up every 10 minutes. So you're not going to see every single turn you make or when you stop all the time, but at the end of the day, you're going to be able to see generally where you went, maybe where you had to stop to get gas or stop for food, and you're going to get a really good idea of where you went. So similar to these birds, we don't need to see real time where they go because that would also use a lot of battery. But this is helping us to understand at the end of the summer what kind of places they need to go to raise their young. And to get this data, it's not automatically sent to your phone or computer. So you have to use an antenna. So this is me in a cow pasture field with my computer and an antenna, and you have to get within about 500 meters of a bird, and this little GPS unit will communicate to the antenna, kind of like how a car antenna can pick up from a radio station the information, and then we are able to download it to the computer. And that's how you actually see the coordinates of where they went. And then here's some of the other parts of the project. It's a little more low tech and traditional field biology looking. We're measuring the vegetation in the areas where the kestrels go. So you can look at a map and you can see the dark green area that looks like a forest. You can see the shiny area that looks like a river or a lake, and you can see kind of the flat green area that looks like a field. But because these birds are really interested in learning about like their specific habitat need, and they don't take up that much space, you can't tell from just looking at a map if a field is this tall, like you see this girl is almost up to her shoulder, or ankle deep, like this person is, because kestrels hunt animals that live in the grass or fly just above the grass. So grass height changes how they're going to use a field. So we're taking measurements of the height and then the density, which is how thick it is. And that helps us get a better understanding of what the land around the kestrels is like. And then another important part is monitoring the fledglings. So this is a nest box I was talking about. This one's on a telephone pole. And it's important to watch and figure out when the babies have hatched. So we stick a GoPro, a little camera, on a very large pole up into this hole, and we can see when they're still eggs. We can see when they look like little baby chickens almost, very kind of fluffy white balls in there. And as long as they're in the box after they are hatched, they're called nestlings. And then as soon as they learn how to fly and leave the box for good, they are called fledglings. So if you guys still live with your family, then you are nestlings. I have left my parents' house, so I am a fledgling. And we watch for when the fledglings leave the box, where they go, what they do, because this changes how the parents behave and what those GPS points might mean. The parents still feed the babies when they are fledglings, and they'll come and follow the fledglings around to wherever the fledglings fly, all over the place. So it helps us understand what exactly those GPS points mean. So just because we get a bunch of vegetation samples and GPS points doesn't really mean that much until you put it all together and look at it. So this is an app that we developed. I will just say for these two, I forgot to mention the tech we use, very low tech, but Dropbox, Google Drive, you all are probably familiar with those, but that's even simple technology like that is really helpful in a project with multiple researchers and partners. And this is what the data we collect looks like. I'm going to send this link in the chat to you all. And while I'm talking about it, you can explore the different birds. So just sent this. Let me know if you have any problem getting it. It might take a minute to load. And I'm sharing my screen and we'll also just go through one on here whenever it loads. Slowly, slowly. So the way that this app works is it's taking the GPS points that we've collected from the birds, oh gosh, and mapping them onto different parts of Warrenton where they've been. So all of the yellow dots that you see are the real places where birds have been at different times. This does not look like it's cooperating. Well, you have a link to explore later, but you can, let me just get back to present. Yes, so all the blue pins are where the nest boxes are. So in the beginning, when the kestrels first have their babies, you will see that a lot of the points are right around the blue box. And you can see that time period in this bottom calendar area. So you can see the very first point we got from a female all the way to the very last point. And you can change that. You can see where did she go the first month, maybe while her eggs hadn't hatched. She probably is staying really close next to the boxes. And then you can see now later in the summer where she goes, now that her nestlings have become fledglings, or even since they have left and become adults. And you can select the different kestrels that you want to look at from this drop down. So this is really useful for us as the scientists because it helps us tell where the birds are before we go to monitor them or track them, because we need to be close enough to see them and download the points. So it's useful to us right away, but it's also a really good communication tool. And we work with a lot of different farmers. You can see in this image what looks like a lot of fields, and most of these boxes are on farms themselves. So this is a way that we can share what we're doing with local people who are curious, or let people know, like, this is a box right here, but there's a bunch of points here that shows this bird might be going somewhere completely different. And we might go ask that landowner and say, hey, what if you don't mow your grass for the month of July or something? That might help the kestrels have more food. And this is a lot more convincing and interesting than just telling someone a bunch about the data. So that link is there if you all would like to look at it later. And if you're interested in native plants and animals like the kestrel, you can also use an app called iNaturalist, which uses computer vision, which is basically a algorithm or program looking at a picture and identifying what it is. So I'm going to show you on my iNaturalist how this works. So this is a picture of a kestrel that I took. I'm going to upload it. And it right away guessed correctly that this was an American kestrel. And it also took the data from that image. So this is something you don't see when you look at the image, but that it exists as part of the file. So it sees the date that I took it, the time, and also the location. So it puts together all of the information plus the way that this animal looks to guess what it is. And I'm going to submit this observation. And this iNaturalist is really cool because it's a way that you can take a picture of something you don't know and see if the computer can guess what it is and help you learn about it, and also contribute data to research projects. So here's other things, other animals and plants that I've uploaded before. I did not know what kind of snake this was, so I listed it, and then other people can also guess what species it might be and help you figure out what it is. So it's cool to learn, and then you have a list of what you've seen, and you're also contributing to research. And you can get that app for your computer or phone, and it is free and very fun. Okay, the second project that I want to share with you all is the Wildbook Artificial Intelligence System for Animal Recognition. So this is an online, I guess we're starting with the kestrel. That's a little more simple. It's a blend of the fieldwork and technology and tools like the GPS unit, cameras, things like that, and then developing an app. So that's kind of a fusion, and it's a little less complex than something like Wildbook. Wildbook is at the other end of the spectrum of being very technologically complex, but still bringing together field biology with cool computer science. It's going to make it work a lot better. So in a nutshell, the way that this program works is like the facial recognition software on a phone that you can hold it up, it looks at your face and scans your features and tells who you are in order to unlock that phone. And in these pictures, that's what's going on between the images. So your phone has an idea of what you look like this top zebra. Maybe this is what your face looks like when you hold it up. It's comparing features between the two and saying, yes, you're the same person, I'll unlock this phone, or no, you're not, I'm not going to unlock this phone. To get a little sciencey, it's important to know which animals are individuals, like who is who, in order to estimate population size. So knowing the size of the amount of animals that are out there tells us, are they increasing every year? Are they decreasing? How many are there? How many are young? How many are old? And the way that that's done is you catch an animal on one day, you mark it, which can be a stripe of paint, it can be a tag on the ear, you can clip part of the ear so you know who is who, and then you write down who that is. And then the next day, the next month, the next year, you go out and you catch as many animals as you can again. And then this number that you caught on the second day, who you also caught on the first day, is plugged into a formula to help you get population size. But catching animals, really hard, really expensive, dangerous for people and the animals, and impossible for some things. Like think about a whale, how are you gonna catch that? So a lot of scientists are turning towards taking pictures of animals instead of actually physically catching them, and then trying to tell them individually apart based on their markings. So, can you guys tell if these two Grevy's zebra are the same or different? Also, fun fact that it takes to understand this picture, every zebra stripes are unique, just like your fingerprint. So you can take a look and compare the stripes, and give you guys 60 seconds and you can put in the chat if they're the same or different. Ooh, I ran so fast, different. You are correct. So, oh, chats are still coming in. Yep, they are different. Someone said the tail is different. Yeah, that's right. There's other parts that we can look at where we see a lot of patterns. So let's look at like the side, like the rib. I see there's something that looks like an N right there, and then it has a Y coming off of it. And I don't see it on the zebra on the right. And kind of on his bum, I see a sideways M or W that I don't see there. So compare those two areas, they are different. And that's something that humans with our eyes and pattern recognition can do pretty easily when it's just two pictures side by side. But what about a picture like this? Can anyone tell if any animals are the same between these two? It's probably really hard. This is more common in wildlife biology because some animals group together or you can't get close enough to take a perfect shot. And sorry, I just got a shot. And this is something that would be really hard for people. And picture you have one of those camera traps that's taking pictures for a month and you have a ton of images. And to tell just manually with your eyes whether there are animals who are the same or different would take forever if you had to compare each picture to each other. So humans might not be able to do this, but with Wildbook, your computer can tell if there are any matching animals between these pictures. And quick overview of how Wildbook works. It starts by users uploading an image of animals that they've taken. And first of all, your computer has to know, is there an animal in this picture? And Wildbook is able to say, yes, I see two animals, and it can also tell right away what the species is. So this is an African wild dog. Next, those pictures move on, so the ones you've just uploaded are scanned kind of like a barcode, and different algorithms pick up on different areas of uniqueness between animals and within the photo. So one algorithm that we use for humpback whales that are pictured here is called Hotspotter, and Hotspotter loves to look for patterns. So humpback whales have unique scars and black and white splotches on their flukes, which is the tip of their tail. So you can see right here, that is the area that Hotspotter has said, ooh, this is cool and different. And CurveRank is a different algorithm, the name of a different algorithm that looks at the edges. So it will only look at the edges of a fin and say, look at all these zigzags and notches, those are all unique. And I'm gonna look at them and compare them. And this CurveRank can be used on the edge of any animal's body part that might be unique. So dolphin tail, a whale's tail, or an elephant's ear. The notches on an ear are unique. Hotspotter can look at any animal with a pattern, like those African wild dogs or the zebras that we were looking at. This is a little more complex, just the process that your picture of an animal is going to go through, looking at different body parts and using different algorithms for those. And then finally, you, the user, will be given a list of the most likely matches. So it's scoring. You can see here 1 through 12, who's probably the best match within the database, who matches the photo you just uploaded. So now this has taken away the process of us going through every single image of, this is an orca whale, every single image of an orca whale that we have or that's in the database. We don't have to go through all of those. The computer has just compared all those. Now, all we have to do is what we did at the very beginning of the activity, comparing two pictures side by side. So we can quickly look at these two. This is the one that we've uploaded on the left. I see that there is a sideways V looking scar, and then this kind of U. And I can also see on this animal, I see that U, I see that V, I see this is kind of a grayish color. I will say, yes, these are the same. And that's how we figure out the population size of different animals. But Wildbook can also help us learn a lot of other cool things. So this is a sperm whale named Pinchy, and he lives in, or she lives, excuse me, in the Caribbean. And we can see all of the points where she has been cited and a picture of her has been uploaded into the Wildbook database. And she loves the west side of the island of Dominica. So that is interesting to see. We can also tell who an animal's friends and family are. And that is done by Wildbook looking at all of the pictures of animals who show up together and what kind of behavior they have. So this animal in the middle, her name is 5560. We know that it is a female because it says any circle with pink around it is a female, and any pink arrow means maternal relationship, which means she is the mom. We see it pointing to these two males. So we're able to see who her offspring are. And then all of these gray lines show different pictures that have shown up with these two animals or with multiple animals together. So we can see who her friends are, who she's mixing with, perhaps who her partner will be, and that can tell us about gene flow and other really important questions. And by the numbers, Wildbook is a huge system. There's 53 different species that are being studied. There's nearly 16,000 users across all continents. There's over 6 million pictures and videos uploaded to the system, and there have been 81 research papers produced using Wildbook. So like I said, huge system. This is what we call the Wildbook ecosystem. You can see a lot of different people are involved, from data scientists, biologists, citizen scientists, and decision makers, policymakers, computer vision researchers. So this is to show that there was a lot of creativity that went into solving this problem, speeding this up, so that we can come up with these answers to the questions about animals much faster. And it also takes collaboration between biologists and all of these different people. And very quickly, this is our last activity, so we'll just give it a few minutes. This is a program that you all can use called Zooniverse, and it's similar to Wildbook. It's, once you make an account, you can contribute data to tons of wildlife projects around the world. Data like this is important in building a tool like Wildbook and learning more about animals. So I'm going to send you all this, but we'll work on one of these together. I'm going to click on this penguin watch, counting penguin chicks and eggs. I'm going to say wild egg hunt, which is looking into their nests. So these are camera traps, which we talked about at the beginning, and they're showing pictures of penguins. So this would be so many pictures for one scientist to go through. So instead, it's opened up to people around the world to help see if they can look into the nest and see any eggs. So it says they spend a lot of time laying on their nest and only rarely stand up to look inside. So we would point out if we can see anything. So looking at this, they're all laying down. This one's standing up, but I can't see in there. Can't confirm if it's an empty nest or not. So I'm just gonna say, I can't clearly see into any of the penguins' nest. Done. It gives me another random picture. So you can come on here and do as many pictures as you would like from as many different kinds of animals as you would like. Here are all different projects that you can use. A lot of them have to do with wildlife. That's how this website started, but you can also see that there are projects that deal with art, biology, climate, history, language, medicine, on, even space. And I just want to leave you all with this diagram. Going back to what we talked about in the very beginning, we can all contribute to conservation. For some of us, we may really want to be the ones in the field taking measurements of animals, learning about them, or maybe we want to be an engineer, but we still have a passion for animals and conservation. So this diagram shows how people can think about their purpose. And this is completely different for everyone. So your purpose is right at the middle of what you love to do, what the world needs, what you can get paid for because you do have to make a living, and what your strengths are. And factoring into this is also your passion, mission, vocation, profession. And if we're so lucky to find something that can bring all of these things together, that's your life's purpose. And maybe conservation and wildlife comes into some of these different circles for you, but it's not where all of them meet. That's totally fine. Your purpose can still involve conservation through volunteering, through donating, or through education of other people. So just hope you all can reflect on where there might be a place for wildlife or conservation within your purpose. And that is all from me. Thank you all so much for listening and for being engaged and all your really great thoughts and ideas in the chat. If you have any questions right now, want to ask anything at all, feel free to unmute yourself or put something in the chat. I'm going to the chat now because I saw that there are a couple questions I will talk about right now. So Taylor asked if I've ever used my own creative thing when that girl was painting and drawing her data. I love to do art and photography of the different animals that I see and the places that I go. And I'm very interested in science communications through blogs and social media and trying to connect the projects that I'm working on to people's lives. A lot of people will say, so what? What do I care about this giraffe that's on the screen right now? But giraffes are an important part of cycling carbon in the ecosystem and keeping trees back, which helps farmers who raise cattle. So if you care about cattle or farmers, you'll care about the giraffe. Or giraffes bring in a lot of tourism money, which is really good for people's livelihoods. So I love to use creativity to try to find those connections that people might not see right away. Riley asked if a GPS tracker has ever fallen off of an animal and how do we find out? The bird, specific to the kestrels, they can turn their head around almost as much as an owl, and you have to get the GPS backpack on just right, or the female might try to turn her head around and bite it off. And we found one dangling. Mostly we figure out if they've fallen off by just watching the birds every day right after we put the GPS on. After they get used to it, it probably won't fall off. Sometimes the GPS can, if you see that a GPS hasn't moved in days, you're probably like, oh no, GPS has fallen off or the animal is dead and staying in one spot. But the problem with our GPS units are they are solar powered, so if they don't have access to sun, we wouldn't get that information. So it's an important kind of tricky thing that might come up in a research project. Oh, Taylor, thank you for saying this was amazing. You all are amazing. Thank you. Does anyone else have any other questions or want to share something they learned or are excited to do in conservation? Is anyone going to try using Zooniverse? It's really fun. Or iNaturalist. They're both a good time. Okay. Well, if anyone ever has any other questions or wants to share an idea, you can get my contact info through CodeVA. And it was a pleasure speaking with you all this afternoon. Thank you so much for joining. And oops, I just saw a message from Jasper before I hand it over. What do you need to study to become a conservation biologist? That's a great question. So specific to becoming a conservation biologist, you would want to study some form of biology or ecology. Every school that you go to kind of labels them differently or has different programs for it. So you just have to do your research into what the school has. Some have very, like Virginia Tech, for example, has very specific wildlife biology major, but University of Virginia had an environmental science major that I did that allowed me to learn about animal habitat and stuff and such. But it's important to work in a lab or do some research while you're a student or volunteer in the community and get involved in projects because conservation is all about making partnerships and connections to save the animal. It's not only about doing the research and answering the question. It's like, okay, how can we take that the next step to help this animal? So volunteering and learning how to communicate with different types of people is so important to making your data meaningful in the world. So that's just as important as the formal education you get. Taylor asked, is it difficult using the GPS tracker or easy? It is easy. It is difficult to get the points sometimes. So that picture where I was holding up the antenna wand, it can be very hard to get the points. Sometimes the batteries die, maybe the bird is far away. That can be very frustrating. I always think about it as Pokemon Go in real life. Like I'm trying to drive around and find the bird. So it's, to me, it feels like a fun game or a challenge, but can be tricky. Okay, I see it as 301, so I'm going to turn it back over to CJ now.
Awesome, thank you so much, Megan. I personally have Zooniverse pulled up in the background. I'm excited to play with it. Thanks so much for coming to join us. I think by the chat's reaction, everybody else says thank you as well. I do have just a really quick participant survey that if you all could fill out for me. It's just a couple questions, super quick, just to let us know how your day's been going so we can give Megan all her due praise. Thank you so much for joining us. If this is your last session this week, have a great rest of your year. If you are coming to our next one, we'll see you then.
Hey, thank you, everyone. Thank you, CJ. Thank you, Momin.
Thank you.
And Megan, I have a separate survey for you, my friend.
Okay, great. Do you want me to stay on or should I go off now too?